8 Marines hit the sand in 45 seconds. The last one was still gasping for air when the laughter died. 43 witnesses stood frozen around the combat pit at Camp Lejeune, their smirks replaced by something closer to fear. The woman who had just dismantled their best fighters wiped blood from her knuckles and did not smile. Maya Sinclair was 20 years old, weighed 118 pounds, and had arrived that morning with records showing nothing but a green belt and a desk job. What those records could not show was that 6 months ago in Yemen, she had killed 2 men with her bare hands to save 12 hostages. Master Sergeant Brennan stepped onto the sand, his voice barely a whisper. "Who the hell are you?" If this story grips you the way it gripped me, hit subscribe and follow to the end. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Master Sergeant Cole Brennan had been running the Marine Combat Instructor course for 11 years. He had trained over 400 Marines in close-quarters combat. He had broken bones, shattered egos, and built warriors from raw recruits who arrived thinking they knew how to fight. He had never once questioned his ability to identify weakness on sight. The moment Maya Sinclair walked through that door, he knew she did not belong. She stood at the back of the formation, with her shoulders slightly hunched and her eyes fixed on the floor. Her dark hair was pulled into a regulation bun that looked like it might come undone at any moment. Her physical training uniform hung loose on a frame that carried no visible muscle definition. She looked like someone had sent the wrong person to the wrong course by accident. Brennan checked his roster twice. The name was there. Staff Sergeant Maya Sinclair, age 20, current billet listed as administrative support. Martial arts qualification showed green belt earned 18 months prior. No combat deployments. No special operations background. Nothing that explained why she was standing in a room full of infantry Marines reconnaissance operators and decorated combat veterans. He walked directly to her position in the formation. "Staff Sergeant Sinclair." She looked up. Her eyes were pale gray, almost colorless in the fluorescent lighting. Something about them made Brennan pause for half a second before he continued. "Yes, Master Sergeant. Your records show you're an admin clerk from Camp Pendleton. Greenbelt. No combat experience." He let the words hang in the air. "You want to explain to me why you're standing in my course?" "I was approved for transfer, Master Sergeant. My paperwork is complete." "I didn't ask about your paperwork. I asked why you're here." Maya's voice remained steady. "I want to become an instructor, Master Sergeant." Laughter rippled through the formation. Not loud, not overt, but present. The kind of laughter that said everything without saying anything at all. Brennan did not laugh. His jaw tightened. "This course produces Marines who will teach other Marines how to survive hand-to-hand combat. We don't produce participation trophies. We don't lower standards for anyone." He leaned closer. "If you can't handle what happens here, leave now. Save yourself the embarrassment." "I understand, Master Sergeant." "Do you? Because looking at you right now, I see someone who's going to wash out before the week ends." Maya said nothing. Her eyes held his for exactly 2 seconds before returning to the floor. Brennan walked away, already dismissing her from his thoughts. She was a bureaucratic error, a box someone had checked without understanding what the course actually required. She would be gone within days, probably within hours. He had no idea how wrong he was. Staff Sergeant Victor Hale had been waiting for this moment since he saw her name on the candidate roster 3 days ago. He was 34 years old, a reconnaissance Marine with 2 combat deployments and a 3rd-degree black belt that he had earned through years of training that left scars on his knuckles and his opponents. Brennan had selected him as assistant instructor specifically because he understood how to push candidates to their limits. He also understood how to break them. Hale approached Maya during the first break, positioning himself close enough that she had to step back against the wall. "You're the admin clerk." It was not a question. "Staff Sergeant Sinclair." "I know who you are." Hale's smile carried no warmth. "What I don't know is who you convinced to approve your transfer. Must have been persuasive." Maya's expression did not change. "My qualifications met the requirements." "Your qualifications?" Hale laughed once, sharp and dismissive. "You have a green belt and a desk job. Half the candidates in this course have combat experience. Some of them have killed people with their hands. You're going to stand in a pit with them and pretend you belong. I'm going to complete the training, Staff Sergeant." "No, you're not." He stepped closer. "This is where Marines get hurt for real. When you wash out, and you will remember that some of us tried to warn you." He walked away before she could respond. Maya watched him go. Her hands remained at her sides, relaxed. Her breathing remained steady. But behind those colorless eyes, something shifted. A calculation. A measurement of distance timing and vulnerability. She had been underestimated before. She had learned to use it. The first training session began at 0800 in the combat pit behind Building 247. 43 candidates stood in formation around a rectangle of packed sand, roughly 40 feet by 20 feet. Wooden railings surrounded the pit, worn smooth from decades of hands gripping them during decades of violence. Brennan stood at the center. "This pit has trained Marines for 30 years. It has seen broken bones, separated shoulders, and more blood than any of you want to imagine. What happens here prepares you for the moment when technique is the difference between survival and a flag-draped coffin." He paused, letting the words settle. "Today we assess baseline capability, controlled grappling, takedowns and escapes, tap to submit." His eyes swept the formation. "Staff Sergeant Hale will pair you with partners." Hale consulted his clipboard. He worked through the roster, methodically matching candidates by size and experience. Infantry sergeant with infantry sergeant. Reconnaissance operator with reconnaissance operator. Then he reached Maya's name. "Sinclair." He looked up with that same cold smile. "You'll partner with Corporal Dawson." Murmur passed through the candidates. Marcus Dawson was 6 feet 2 inches tall and weighed 220 pounds. He had served 3 combat deployments, held a second-degree black belt, and was known throughout the battalion for training sessions that sent opponents to the medical unit. He was also known for not controlling his intensity. Dawson stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow across Maya's position. He looked down at her with an expression that mixed amusement with contempt. "Seriously?" Hale nodded. "Controlled grappling, takedowns and escapes. This isn't even going to be a drill." Dawson cracked his knuckles. "It's going to be a demonstration." Maya stepped onto the sand without hesitation. The other candidates gathered around the pit's edge, already anticipating what would happen. The new girl, the admin clerk with the green belt, was about to learn what real Marines were made of. Brennan observed from the far side. He told himself he was allowing the system to work. If she could not handle peer pressure, she could not handle the responsibility of training Marines. Let her discover her limits in a controlled environment. What he failed to understand was that Maya Sinclair had already discovered her limits in environments where failure meant death. Dawson attacked immediately. He shot forward with a double-leg takedown, driving his shoulder into Maya's midsection with the force of a train. No technique, no finesse, Pure, overwhelming power designed to slam her into the sand and establish dominance before she could think. Maya went down hard. Her back hit the packed sand with an impact that drove the air from her lungs. Dawson's weight pressed down on her 220 pounds of muscle and aggression, pinning her to the ground. He transitioned to mount position, knees driving into her biceps, hands pressing toward her throat. "Tap out," he said. Maya's palm hit the sand. Dawson held position for 2 extra seconds before releasing. When he stood, his face showed satisfaction. Not the satisfaction of victory, but the satisfaction of confirmation. She was exactly what he expected. "Stay down next time," he said. "Save yourself the trouble." Laughter from the candidates gathered around the pit. Maya rose slowly, brushing sand from her shorts. Her ribs ached from the impact. Her arms throbbed from where his knees had pressed. But her face showed nothing. She had lost deliberately. In Yemen, her instructors had taught her a principle that most fighters never learned. The greatest advantage in combat was being underestimated. Let them see weakness. Let them believe they understood your limitations. Then when it mattered, become something they never anticipated. Maya Sinclair was not here to prove anything to Marcus Dawson. Not yet. The next 3 days followed a pattern that Maya had anticipated. Hale critiqued her form during every technique session. His corrections were technically accurate, but delivered with a tone that suggested hopelessness. "Your footwork is slow. Your balance is wrong. Your transitions are sloppy." Each comment designed to reinforce the narrative that she did not belong. Dawson made contact during striking drills with force that exceeded what the exercises required. His jabs left bruises on her arms. His kicks targeted her ribs with precision that could not be accidental. Each impact a reminder that she was surrounded by predators. Other candidates stopped including her in informal conversations. They grouped for meals without inviting her. They formed study partnerships without acknowledging her presence. The isolation was systematic, coordinated without explicit coordination. Maya accepted all of it. She arrived early to every session. She performed every drill with effort that appeared to fall short. She asked questions that seemed naive. She presented herself as exactly what they expected, a misplaced clerk who had somehow wandered into a world she did not understand. At night, in the 8-by-10-foot room that served as her temporary quarters, she trained. The movements were silent, precise, drawn from training that appeared in no Marine Corps manual. Krav Maga techniques that Israeli instructors had drilled into her muscle memory. Systema principles that a former Russian Special Forces operative had taught her during sessions that left her body screaming. Filipino blade patterns that translated seamlessly to empty-hand combat. She moved through katas that had been designed for one purpose, ending threats with maximum efficiency and minimum exposure. By the 4th day, her body was covered in bruises that her uniform concealed. Her ribs protested with every breath. Her shoulders ached from takedowns that had been applied with force beyond what training required. None of it mattered. Pain was an old companion. Her father had taught her that long before the Marine Corps found her. Thomas Sinclair had served as an Army Ranger for 12 years before an IED in Afghanistan sent shrapnel through his spine and ended his career. He came home with a wheelchair, a Purple Heart, and a determination that his daughter would never be as vulnerable as the world wanted women to be. He taught her to throw her first punch at 8. By 12, she could execute a blood choke. By 16, she had shattered the wrist of a boy who tried to assault her behind the local grocery store. The police called it self-defense. Her father called it a lesson. She enlisted the week after her 18th birthday. The Marine Corps was her path forward, the only direction that made sense. Boot camp at Paris Island pushed her, but she had been pushed her entire life. She graduated in the top tier of her platoon. Then the recruiters found her. Maya's combatives scores during boot camp had triggered a flag in a system that monitored for certain capabilities. A woman from MARSOC's intelligence section visited her 3 weeks after graduation. The conversation lasted 4 hours and covered topics that Maya had never imagined. The Ghost Element program needed women who could enter spaces that male operators could not access. Cultural barriers, gender-segregated environments, situations where male presence would trigger immediate armed response. They needed women who could blend into hostile territory, complete objectives without weapons, and handle themselves when situations turned violent. They needed women who could kill with their hands. Maya volunteered. For 2 years, she trained at facilities that appeared on no official map. She learned techniques from instructors whose backgrounds were classified beyond her clearance level. She became something that the Marine Corps did not officially acknowledge existed. Her first operational deployment came in Libya. Intelligence had identified a human trafficking network operating from a compound in the coastal region. 12 women were being held inside, scheduled for transport to buyers in 3 countries. Standard assault would result in the captives being killed before operators could reach them. Maya went in alone. Local clothing concealed blade her training. 2 men tried to stop her from reaching the holding room where the women were caged. She killed the first one with a throat strike that crushed his trachea. The second one fought harder, managed to draw a knife, slashed her forearm before she broke his neck with a technique that left no external marks. The 12 women walked out alive. Maya received no award. Her name appeared in no report. The official narrative credited signals intelligence and a coordinated strike element. 6 months later in Yemen, her mentor died. Master Gunnery Sergeant Elena Vance had recruited Maya into Ghost Element. She had trained her, shaped her, pushed her beyond every limit she believed she had. Vance was 53 years old, had served for 31 years, and was the most capable operator Maya had ever known. The extraction went wrong. Enemy forces had been tipped off. The helicopter took fire before it reached the landing zone. Vance pushed Maya through the door as the aircraft went down. Maya survived. Vance did not. Now Maya lay on her rack at Camp Lejeune, staring at a photograph she had retrieved from beneath her pillow. 2 women standing in front of a mud brick wall. Maya in civilian clothes, face thinner than it was now. Beside her, Elena Vance, with silver hair and the weathered features of someone who had spent too many years in hard places. The moment you fight for ego instead of purpose, you become the monster they fear. Vance had told her that during training. Maya had not fully understood it then. She understood it now. The men in this course did not deserve her anger. They were products of a system that had never made room for someone like her. Brennan was not malicious. He was afraid that advancing unqualified Marines would cost lives. That fear was not unreasonable. He was simply wrong about her. Tomorrow was day 5. Hale had organized an unofficial sparring session in the pit. Word had spread through the barracks. Off the record, no instructors watching closely, a chance for candidates to test themselves without formal consequences. He had invited everyone except Maya. She would show up anyway. Not for ego, not for revenge, for purpose. These men needed to learn something that might save their lives someday. They needed to learn that the assumptions they carried, the certainties they clung to, could get them killed in environments where reality did not care about expectations. If embarrassing them taught that lesson, so be it. Maya put the photograph away and let her breathing slow. Tomorrow she would show them what silence sounded like when it finally chose to speak. The formation assembled at 0700 for the standard 5-mile run that began every training day. Maya positioned herself in the middle of the pack, matching the pace of candidates around her, revealing nothing. Hale ran alongside for the final mile. "Tonight," he said, his breathing controlled despite the exertion. "Pit session, 1900 hours. Candidates only. I didn't receive an invitation." "That's because you weren't invited." His smile was cold. "These sessions get rough. We wouldn't want you to get hurt." "I'll be there anyway." Hale's smile flickered. Something shifted in his eyes, uncertainty that disappeared almost immediately. "Your funeral." He accelerated ahead, leaving her behind. The day's training sessions passed without incident. Maya performed each drill with effort that appeared adequate, but unremarkable. She absorbed corrections without argument. She partnered with candidates who treated her as an obstacle to be managed rather than a peer to be respected. By 1800, word had spread through every barracks on the training compound. The new girl was going to show up to the unofficial session. The admin clerk with the green belt was going to step into the pit with Marines who had been waiting for exactly this opportunity. The entertainment practically arranged itself. Maya returned to her room at 1830. She sat on the edge of her rack and allowed herself 30 minutes of stillness. Not meditation, not relaxation, just stillness. The calm that preceded violence. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was slow. Her mind was clear. At 1855, she walked to the combat pit. The portable floodlights had already been positioned, turning the sand into a pale arena against the darkening North Carolina sky. 43 Marines formed a rough circle around the rectangle of packed earth. Some sat on the wooden railings. Others stood with arms crossed, conversations dying as they noticed her arrival. Hale stood at the pit's edge, his black belt wrapped around his waist. His expression combined anticipation with contempt. "Look who decided to show up." Maya walked to the opposite side of the sand without responding. "The rules are simple," Hale announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Controlled contact, tap to submit. No strikes to the throat, groin, or spine. Everything else is fair." He paused, his eyes finding Maya across the pit. "Questions?" She shook her head. The first bout matched 2 infantry sergeants who had been trading insults all week. The fight lasted 40 seconds before one tapped to an armbar. The second bout went longer, ending when a rear naked choke forced submission. The crowd's energy built with each exchange. This was what they had come to see. Marines testing themselves against Marines. Skill against skill. Will against will. Then Hale pointed directly at Maya. "New girl, you're up." She stepped onto the sand. Her feet sank slightly into the packed surface, cool against her bare soles. The floodlights cast sharp shadows across the faces of the Marines gathered around the pit. 43 sets of eyes watching, waiting, expecting exactly what they had expected from the moment she arrived. Her first opponent was Marcus Dawson. He stepped into the pit with the confidence of a man who had already defeated her once. 220 pounds of muscle and aggression rolling his shoulders, cracking his neck. He looked down at her with an expression that mixed amusement with anticipation. "Ready for round 2?" Maya did not respond. Brennan had pushed through the crowd to the pit's edge. He stood with his arms crossed, observing, not intervening, letting the system work. "This should be quick," someone said from the circle. Dawson shot forward. The double-leg takedown was identical to his first attack, driving for her midsection with overwhelming power. The technique that had slammed her into the sand on day 1 that had established his dominance, that had confirmed everything they believed about her. Maya did not go down. She sprawled, dropping her hips and driving her weight onto his shoulders. Before he could adjust, before his mind could process that something was different, her arm snaked around his neck. The guillotine choke locked before he understood what was happening. Her forearm pressed against his throat. Her other hand secured the grip. Her hips blocked his movement, her legs controlled his base. The technique was textbook, but the application was something else entirely. Speed that seemed impossible. Precision that left no margin for escape. Dawson struggled. His hands clawed at her arm. His body thrashed against her control. 3 seconds that must have felt like an eternity. His palm slapped the sand. Maya released immediately. She stepped back, her breathing barely elevated. Silence. Dawson rose with his face flushed from the choke and from something else. Humiliation. Disbelief. He stared at her like he was seeing someone he had never encountered before. "Next," Hale said. His voice had lost its cold confidence. The second opponent was a sergeant named Patterson, taller than Dawson, faster with footwork that showed genuine training. He did not rush. He circled probing with jabs, testing her reactions. Maya waited. Patterson threw a hook designed to measure distance. Maya slipped at her head, moving just enough to let his fist pass her cheek, and answered with a low kick to his lead thigh that buckled his knee. Before he could recover, she closed distance, secured an underhook, and executed a hip throw that put him flat on his back. Mount came naturally, knees pinning his biceps, elbow descending toward his face. She stopped 1 inch from his nose. "Controlled contact," she said. He tapped. 14 seconds. Murmurs now. Not mockery. Something else. Confusion mixing with the first hints of respect. Hale's expression had gone rigid. He pointed at 2 more candidates. "Both of you. Together." 2 on 1. Maya nodded. The next pair were infantry marines, both tan belts, both confident that numbers would decide the outcome. They entered from opposite sides, trying to flank her. Maya moved before they could coordinate. She closed on the one to her right, driving a palm strike into his solar plexus that folded him forward. She pivoted to catch the second one's incoming hook on her forearm and redirected his momentum into a knee strike that dead-legged him instantly. The first tried to grab her from behind. She dropped her base, hooked his ankle, swept him onto his back. Transition to side control. Kimura that hyperextended his shoulder until he tapped. The second was still trying to stand when she reached him. Arm drag to off balance. Sweep to put him down. Mount. Americana that torqued his elbow. His palm hit the sand. 21 seconds. Both finished. 4 down. The pit had gone completely silent. 43 Marines stared at the woman who had just dismantled 4 of their own with efficiency that most of them had only seen in training films. 4 more. The voice came from somewhere in the crowd. "Send 4. Hale looked at the remaining candidates. His face had gone pale under the floodlights. Then he stepped into the pit himself. 3 others followed, all black belts, all with years of training, all with combat experience that should have made this outcome impossible. 4 against 1. Brennan pushed forward to the pit's edge. His expression revealed nothing, but he did not stop what was happening. The 4 spread out, trying to encircle her. They had learned from watching. No more sequential attacks. No more arrogance. Maya breathed. The world slowed. She moved. The first caught an elbow to the jaw that snapped his head sideways and dropped him to 1 knee. The second received a front kick to the sternum that folded him, followed by a knee to the forehead as he doubled over. The third managed to grip her wrist, but she rolled with it, using his momentum to throw him over her hip and into the sand. Hale was last. He was the best of them, and he knew it. He shot in low, perfect level change textbook double-leg takedown, the technique that had worked against every opponent he had ever faced. Maya sprawled, but she did not go for the guillotine. Instead, she transitioned to his back as his drive carried him forward, sinking her hooks around his hips and threading her arm across his throat. The rear naked choke was textbook. Forearm against the carotid arteries, other hand securing the grip behind his head, legs controlling his torso so he could not turn or roll free. Hale fought. He gripped her arm. He tried to tuck his chin. He attempted to bridge and escape, every technique he knew, every instinct screaming for survival. Nothing worked. 7 seconds later, his palm hit the sand. Maya held the choke exactly 1 second longer, not enough to injure, just enough to make a point. Then she released and stood. 8 Marines. 45 seconds. Complete silence. Brennan stepped onto the sand. His boots left impressions next to the marks left by bodies that Maya had put there. "Who the hell are you?" Maya wiped sand from her palms. Her breathing remained steady. Her face showed nothing. Staff Sergeant Maya Sinclair. Green Belt. Administrative support. Brennan's jaw tightened. His eyes moved across her with an intensity that felt like physical force. That was not Greenbelt technique. Those transitions, that timing, that is not something taught in any standard course. He stepped closer. "Where did you actually train?" Maya met his stare without flinching. "The training I received does not appear in my service record." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I'm authorized to provide." From beyond the crowd, a voice cut through the silence. "Master Sergeant Brennan?" Everyone turned. A woman in service uniform approached from the administrative building. Her stride was unhurried but purposeful. Silver eagles gleamed on her collar. Colonel Diana Mercer, commanding officer of the training battalion, had arrived. Colonel Diana Mercer stopped at the edge of the pit. Her eyes moved across the scene with the precision of someone who had spent 3 decades reading situations that could turn deadly in seconds. 8 Marines in various states of recovery. Sand disturbed by impacts. Maya Sinclair standing at the center with her breathing barely elevated and her face revealing nothing. "Master Sergeant Brennan," Mercer said again. "Step over here." Brennan moved to her position immediately. His posture shifted from authority to deference in an instant. "Ma'am, I received a call from Quantico 30 minutes ago." Mercer's voice carried the weight of information that changed everything. "From someone whose name will not be spoken in this setting. I was informed that one of my course candidates has a background I was not previously aware of." She looked directly at Maya. "Staff Sergeant Sinclair, do you understand why I am here?" Maya's expression did not change. "Yes, ma'am. I believe I do." Brennan's confusion was visible now. His jaw worked silently, processing implications he could not yet articulate. Mercer addressed him directly. "Staff Sergeant Sinclair spent 2 years attached to Marine Special Operations Command under the Cultural Support Program's Advanced Element. Her training includes close-quarters combat instruction from sources I am not cleared to specify. Her operational history includes deployments that do not officially exist to locations where we were never officially present." The silence that followed was absolute. Brennan stared at Maya with an expression that bordered on disbelief. Everything he had observed over the past 5 days, every assumption he had made, every conclusion he had drawn, all of it collapsed in a single moment. "If her training is that advanced," he said slowly, "why does her record show a green belt?" "Because the training she actually received was never entered into any official system." Mercer's tone remained level. "What she demonstrated tonight represents baseline capability for the program she served in. The reason she's attending this course is that the program no longer exists in its previous form. The master gunnery sergeant who recruited and mentored her was killed in action 6 months ago. Staff Sergeant Sinclair requested return to conventional service. That transition requires formalizing qualifications she can actually acknowledge. Hale had managed to stand. Sand still clung to his physical training gear. He stared at Maya with an expression that combined disbelief with something approaching fear. "Who was her mentor?" Brennan asked. Mercer paused. "Master Gunnery Sergeant Elena Vance, 31 years of service. The most decorated female operator in MARSOC history, though most of those decorations are classified." Something shifted in Maya's face, the first visible crack in her control. Hearing Vance's name spoken aloud by someone who understood what it meant struck her with unexpected force. "Vance trained her personally." Brennan's voice had changed. The skepticism was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like awe. "I met Vance once, Quantico 2019. She put 3 instructors on the ground during a demonstration and made it look effortless." Staff Sergeant Sinclair was her final protege. Mercer turned to face the crowd of Marines still gathered around the pit. "What you witnessed tonight was not an anomaly. It was not luck. It was the result of training that most of you will never receive and experience that none of you want to imagine." She let the words settle. Staff Sergeant Sinclair came to this course to disappear, to become ordinary again. That option no longer appears available. Maya spoke for the first time since Mercer's arrival. "No, ma'am, it does not." The crowd began to disperse slowly, candidates moving away in small groups with voices lowered. The energy had shifted from anticipation of entertainment to something else entirely. They had come to watch a lamb get slaughtered. Instead, they had witnessed a wolf reveal itself. Dawson lingered at the pit's edge. His face still carried the flush from the guillotine choke, but his expression had transformed. The contempt was gone. In its place was the look of a man whose entire understanding of the world had just been dismantled. He watched Maya walk away and said nothing. Brennan found Maya outside the barracks at 2200. She stood alone, her back against the brick wall, her eyes fixed on something in the distance that existed only in her memory. "Staff Sergeant." She straightened slightly. "Master Sergeant, I owe you an apology." Maya turned to face him. His expression carried weight that she had not expected from a man who had spent 11 years breaking Marines and building warriors. "You don't owe me anything." "I do." Brennan moved closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear. 5 days ago, I looked at you and saw a tourist. Someone who wanted a bullet point on her evaluation without understanding what any of this actually meant. I was wrong. You were protecting your Marines. I was protecting my assumptions. He shook his head. There's a difference. One saves lives, the other gets people killed. Maya studied him. The hardness she had observed during her first day was still present, but something beneath it had softened. "Colonel Mercer mentioned Elena Vance," she said quietly. "You said you met her." "Once. Briefly." Brennan's eyes grew distant. "I was a young staff sergeant convinced I understood hand-to-hand combat because I had been doing it for 10 years. Vance walked into that room at Quantico like she owned it. 50 years old at the time, silver hair didn't look like anything special. 3 of us volunteered to demonstrate techniques with her." He paused. "She put us all on the ground in under a minute. Not with speed, not with power, with something I still can't fully describe. Like she knew what we were going to do before we did it." "She called it reading intent," Maya said. "The ability to see the movement before it happens. She taught you that. She taught me everything." The silence between them lasted several seconds. "What happened in Yemen?" Brennan asked finally. "Colonel Mercer said she was killed during extraction." Maya's face tightened. The crack in her control widened slightly. "The mission was compromised. Someone on the inside sold us out. Enemy forces were waiting when the helicopter arrived." Her voice remained steady, but her eyes carried shadows. "Elena pushed me through the door as the aircraft took fire. She stayed behind to provide cover. She saved your life. She gave her life. There's a difference." Brennan nodded slowly. He understood that difference better than most. "The last thing she said to me," Maya continued, "was that the measure of an operator wasn't how many enemies they stopped. It was how many allies they created. I didn't fully understand what she meant until this week. Do you understand now?" Maya looked at the building where 43 Marines were processing what they had witnessed. Some would resent her, some would fear her, but some perhaps would want to learn. "I think I'm starting to." Brennan extended his hand. "Tomorrow, 0800 Colonel Mercer wants to discuss your assignment going forward. I'd like you there." Maya took his hand. His grip was firm, respectful. "I'll be there, Master Sergeant." He walked away, leaving her alone with the darkness and the weight of memories she could never fully escape. The meeting with Colonel Mercer took place in her office at 0800 precisely. Maya arrived in service uniform, her appearance regulation perfect. Brennan was already present, standing at parade rest beside the colonel's desk. Mercer did not waste time with preliminaries. "Staff Sergeant Sinclair, I'm recommending your immediate certification at the black belt level based on demonstrated proficiency. I'm also recommending your assignment as assistant instructor for the duration of this course under Master Sergeant Brennan's supervision." Maya processed the words. "Ma'am, I came here to complete the standard qualification, not to receive special treatment." "This isn't special treatment." Mercer's tone left no room for argument. "This is the appropriate application of your capabilities. You have skills that these candidates need to learn. Keeping you in a student role would waste resources and deny them training that could save their lives." Brennan spoke. "I've reviewed the curriculum. There are modules where your expertise exceeds mine. Close quarters combat without weapons. Techniques for operators working in isolation. Methods of engagement when you're outweighed and outnumbered. You want me to teach what I did last night? I want you to teach how you did what you did last night." He held her gaze. "Those 8 Marines are going to train other Marines. What you showed them, what you could teach them, will spread further than anything they'll learn from standard instruction." Maya considered the offer. Everything she had planned, the quiet completion of the course, the anonymous return to conventional service, the disappearance into ordinary duty, all of it evaporated in the face of what they were proposing. "The candidates who tried to break me," she said, "they become my students." Mercer nodded. "If you accept." The irony was not lost on Maya. The men who had mocked her, isolated her, and attempted to humiliate her would now learn from her. "I accept." Brennan allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction. "One more thing," Mercer said. "The men you defeated last night, Corporal Dawson, Staff Sergeant Hale, the others, they need to hear what happened directly from you. Not the classified details, but enough to understand who they were actually facing. You want me to explain myself to them? I want you to give them the chance to respect what they saw instead of resenting it." Mercer leaned forward. "Right now, half of them are processing embarrassment. The other half are processing fear. Neither emotion helps them become better Marines. What they need is context." Maya understood. The revelation of her background had been necessary to explain last night's outcome. But revelation without relationship created distance. If she was going to teach these men, she needed them to see her as something other than a mystery wrapped in classified files. When, tonight, 1800, I've arranged for the candidates to assemble in the briefing room. Maya stood. I'll be there, ma'am. The briefing room held all 43 candidates seated in rows of metal chairs. The atmosphere was different from the combat pit. No bloodlust, no anticipation of entertainment, just uncertainty, curiosity, and the residual tension of men whose understanding of the world had been shattered. Maya walked to the front of the room alone. Brennan and the other instructors remained outside. This was her moment, her opportunity to bridge the gap between what she was and what they could learn from her. She faced them without notes, without props, without anything except her presence and her words. 18 months ago, I was in a compound in Libya. Intelligence had identified a human trafficking operation. 12 women were being held inside, scheduled for transport to buyers in 3 countries. Standard assault would have resulted in the hostages being killed before extraction. No one moved. No one spoke. I went in alone, local clothing, a concealed blade, my training. She paused. 2 men tried to stop me from reaching the holding room. They did not succeed. Dawson was seated in the front row. His face showed the marks of internal struggle. I'm not telling you this to impress you. I'm telling you because you need to understand something about what happened last night. Maya's eyes moved across the room, meeting the gazes of men who had underestimated her. Every single one of you looked at me and saw weakness. You saw my size, my gender, my service record, and you drew conclusions. Those conclusions almost got you hurt. Hale shifted in his seat. His jaw was tight. In combat, assumptions kill faster than bullets. The enemy you underestimate is the enemy who puts you in the ground. She let the words settle. Last night I was not your enemy, but I could have been. And if I had been, some of you would not be sitting here. The silence was absolute. Master Gunnery Sergeant Elena Vance was my mentor. She spent 31 years serving this country in ways that will never be acknowledged. 6 months ago, she died protecting me during an extraction that went wrong. Maya's voice remained steady, but something beneath it carried weight. The last thing she told me was that the measure of a warrior is not the enemies they stop. It's the allies they create. She looked at Dawson directly. I came to this course to disappear. To stop being what the Corps made me and become something ordinary. That was a mistake. What she taught me, it's not meant to be hidden. It's meant to be passed on. She addressed the room again. Starting tomorrow, I'll be serving as assistant instructor for the Advanced Combatives module. You can resent me for what happened last night. You can fear me, or you can learn from me. She paused. The choice is yours. The silence lasted several seconds. Then Dawson stood. Staff Sergeant Sinclair. Maya turned to face him. What I said on your first day. What I did during the drills. The way I treated you. His voice was rough, like the words were being dragged from somewhere deep. I was wrong. I apologize. The room stirred. Dawson was the last person anyone expected to break first. Why? Maya asked simply. Because you could have hurt me last night, really hurt me, but you didn't. You controlled the choke. You released when I tapped. He swallowed. That takes more discipline than anything I've ever shown you. Other candidates shifted in their seats. The tension in the room had transformed into something else. I want to learn what you know, Dawson continued. Whatever it takes, however long it takes. I want to understand how you did what you did. Maya studied him. The arrogance that had defined him 5 days ago was gone. In its place was something raw and genuine. Then show up tomorrow, ready to work. She turned back to the room. That goes for all of you. What I teach will be harder than anything else in this course. The techniques require precision, discipline, and the willingness to fail repeatedly before you succeed. But if you commit to learning, I'll commit to teaching." No one spoke. No one needed to. Maya walked out of the briefing room without looking back. In the hallway, Brennan was waiting. "That was well done. It was necessary. Those aren't mutually exclusive." He fell into step beside her. "Dawson surprised me. I expected him to be the last holdout." He was ashamed. Maya's voice was quiet. Shame either destroys men or transforms them. He chose transformation. "You sound like you've seen it before." "I've seen both outcomes." They walked in silence for several steps. "The training you'll provide," Brennan said. "Will it be enough for them?" Maya stopped. "It will be more than they expect, and less than they need. Real combat doesn't happen in pits. It happens in places where the rules don't exist, and the only arbiter is survival. Can you teach that? I can teach the principles. The application comes from experience." She met his eyes. "And experience comes from situations none of us want to imagine." Brennan nodded slowly. "Then we'll give them the best preparation possible and hope they never need it." "Hope is a poor strategy, Master Sergeant." "It's all we have sometimes." Maya thought about Yemen, about the helicopter going down, about Elena pushing her through the door. Sometimes hope is exactly enough. She walked away, leaving him in the corridor with questions he would never fully answer. The first training session began at 0600 the next morning. Maya stood at the center of the pit, while 8 Marines, the same 8 she had defeated, assembled before her. Dawson was first in line. Hale stood beside him. The others filled in behind their faces, carrying varying expressions of determination and residual uncertainty. "What I teach will hurt," Maya said without preamble. "The techniques require your body to do things it was never designed to do. You'll fail more than you succeed. You'll question why you volunteered." She began to move, demonstrating a basic Krav Maga sequence with speed that made the individual components blur together. "But when someone tries to kill you," she continued, executing a finishing strike that stopped an inch from an imaginary target, "you'll remember what you learned here, and you'll survive." Hale raised his hand. "Staff Sergeant, permission to speak." Maya nodded. "Last night when you had the choke locked in on me, you held it 1 extra second after I tapped." His voice was carefully controlled. "Why?" The other candidates waited. The question hung in the air. "Because you needed to remember how it felt." Maya's voice was cold. "The moment when your body realizes it's going to lose consciousness. The moment when your training fails and survival becomes the only thought. That memory will make you faster next time. It will make you tap earlier when you're teaching others. And it will make you understand that in real combat, there is no extra second. There is only the moment when you die, or the moment when they do." Hale absorbed the answer. Something in his expression shifted from resentment toward understanding. "Today, we start with fundamentals," Maya announced. "Economy of motion, reading intent, control without excessive force." She looked at each of them in turn. "Partner drills, Dawson with Hale, Patterson with Odom. Rotate every 5 minutes. Begin." The training that followed was unlike anything the candidates had experienced. Maya moved between pairs, correcting form with precision that bordered on surgical. Her adjustments were small, but transformative. A slight shift in hip position that doubled the power of a throw. An alteration in grip that turned a weak choke into an inescapable one. Dawson absorbed everything. His size became an asset rather than a liability as he learned to redirect momentum instead of relying on raw strength. By the end of the first hour, his technique had improved more than it had in the previous 5 days combined. Hale struggled more. His existing training conflicted with what Maya taught. The habits he had built over years resisted the changes she demanded. "You're anticipating," Maya told him during a pause. "You're deciding what I'm going to do before I do it, and then you're wrong." "How do I stop? Stop thinking. Start seeing." When she moved into a ready stance. "Attack me!" Hale threw a jab. Maya was not where he expected. His fist passed through empty air as she appeared at his side, her hand resting lightly on his throat. "You telegraphed with your shoulder. You shifted your weight before your arm moved. You looked where you intended to strike." She removed her hand. "Your body announced your intentions 3 different ways. I simply listened." "How long does it take to learn to do that?" Maya considered the question. "For most people, years. For you, less. You already have the physical ability. You just need to unlearn the habits that are limiting you." Hale's frustration was visible. "And if I can't, then you'll be exactly as capable as you were before you met me. Dangerous, skilled, effective." She paused. "But not exceptional. The choice is whether that's enough for you." He returned to drilling without another word, but his movements changed. Slightly slower, more deliberate, focused on sensation rather than execution. It was a beginning. By the end of the first week, the transformation was visible. The 8 candidates Maya trained had separated from the others in capability. Their movements had become more efficient. Their reactions had become faster. Their understanding of combat had deepened in ways that standard instruction could not provide. Brennan observed from the pit's edge during the final session. "You're reaching them," he said quietly. Maya watched Dawson execute a technique she had demonstrated 3 days earlier. His form was not perfect, but it was functional. More importantly, it was his. He had taken what she taught and made it work for his body. "They're reaching themselves. I just showed them where to look. Vance would be proud of you." The word struck harder than Maya expected. Her composure wavered for just a moment before she brought it back under control. "She would tell me I'm not finished yet." Brennan nodded. "Then let's make sure you finish what you started." The call came at 0300 on the 14th day of the course. Maya's phone vibrated against the metal desk in her quarters, pulling her from a sleep that had been shallow at best. She reached for it without opening her eyes, muscle memory guiding her hand. "Sinclair." "Staff Sergeant, this is Colonel Mercer. I need you in my office in 10 minutes. Don't change into uniform. Come as you are." The line went dead. Maya was on her feet before the implications fully registered. 0300 summons. No uniform required. Something had happened that did not follow normal protocols. She pulled on PT gear and running shoes, then moved through the darkened corridors at a pace just short of running. Her mind catalogued possibilities. Another classified briefing. New orders from Quantico. Something related to her past service. None of those possibilities prepared her for what waited in Mercer's office. Brennan was already there, his face carrying an expression Maya had never seen on him. Not anger, not concern. Something closer to controlled fury. Beside him stood a man in civilian clothes, tall, thin, with the kind of forgettable face that was deliberately cultivated. His eyes moved across Maya with recognition that should not have existed. "Staff Sergeant Sinclair." His voice was flat, professional. "My name is David Chen. I'm with the Defense Intelligence Agency." Maya's blood went cold. DIA involvement meant something had surfaced from her classified past. Something that required immediate attention from people who operated in shadows. What happened? Chen glanced at Mercer, who nodded. 6 hours ago, we intercepted communications from a cell operating in Eastern Europe. They referenced an operation in Libya 18 months ago. Specifically, they referenced the American operative who killed 2 of their associates during a rescue operation. Maya's hands remained steady, but her pulse accelerated. They have my identity. Not yet. But they have a description. Female, young, trained in close quarters combat, attached to a unit that doesn't officially exist. Chen's eyes locked onto hers. They're offering a significant bounty for information leading to your identification. Brennan stepped forward. How significant? $2 million. The number hung in the air. $2 million was enough to motivate professionals, enough to trigger searches through classified databases, enough to put every person Maya had ever contacted at risk. How did they connect the Libya operation to me? Maya's voice was controlled, but underneath it, something darker was building. We don't know yet. We're investigating potential leaks within the intelligence community. Chen paused. But there's another complication. What? The cell isn't just looking for revenge, they're planning something. The communications we intercepted referenced a timeline, something happening within the next 72 hours on American soil. Mercer spoke for the first time since Maya entered. They want you involved in the response, Staff Sergeant. Your knowledge of their methods, their personnel, their operational patterns. Maya processed the request. The quiet life she had built over the past 2 weeks. The teaching, the mentorship, the gradual healing, all of it evaporated. I'm no longer part of Ghost Element. My clearances were downgraded when I transferred to conventional service. Your clearances can be reinstated within the hour. Chen moved closer. What we need to know is whether you're willing. Willing. Such a simple word for such a complicated question. Maya thought about Elena Vance, about the helicopter going down, about the promise she had made to herself that she would never again operate in the shadows that had consumed her mentor. But she also thought about what those men in Libya had been doing. The 12 women they had been preparing to sell. The countless others who would suffer if this cell completed whatever they were planning. What exactly do you need from me? Chen reached into his jacket and produced a tablet. He handed it to Maya. On the screen was a photograph of a man she recognized immediately. Rashid Hamidi, the leader of the trafficking network she had dismantled in Libya. She had assumed he was dead, killed in the strike that followed her extraction of the hostages. He survived, Chen said, and he's been rebuilding. The operation you disrupted cost him millions in revenue and dozens of personnel. He's spent the last 18 months planning retaliation. Against me specifically, against everything connected to you. The intelligence suggests he's identified your training background as MARSOC affiliated. He doesn't have your name, but he knows where to look. Maya's jaw tightened. If he's planning something on American soil, he'll need local support, contacts, infrastructure. We believe he has all of those. The communications we intercepted referenced assets already in position, multiple targets, coordinated timing. Brennan cut in. This is above my pay grade, but I need to understand something. Are you asking Staff Sergeant Sinclair to go back into the field? Chen shook his head. We're asking her to consult, to help us identify patterns and predict targets based on her knowledge of Hamidi's operations. The actual response will be handled by appropriate units. And if those units need direct support, the question hung unanswered. Maya handed the tablet back to Chen. I'll consult, but I have conditions. Name them. The candidates I've been training stay protected. If Hamidi's people are looking for connections to MARSOC, this base becomes a potential target. I want additional security protocols implemented immediately. Done. I want access to all intelligence related to this cell. Everything you have, not just what you think I need to see. Chen hesitated. Some of that material is compartmentalized beyond your current clearance. Then reinstate my clearances to the appropriate level. You said it could be done within the hour. A long pause. Then Chen nodded. What else? Maya's voice hardened. If Hamidi has assets on American soil, and those assets become active, I'm not staying in a consulting role. I've seen what these people do. I've seen the women they destroy. If there's an opportunity to stop them directly, I'm taking it. Mercer spoke sharply. Staff Sergeant, that's not a decision you can make unilaterally. With respect, Colonel, that's exactly the decision I'm trained to make. The Ghost Element program existed because there are situations where conventional response isn't fast enough or surgical enough. If Hamidi is planning what I think he's planning, you're going to need someone who can operate outside normal parameters. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Chen looked at Mercer. Mercer looked at Brennan. Brennan looked at Maya with an expression that combined concern with something that might have been pride. I'll make the call to Quantico, Mercer said finally. No promises, but I'll advocate for whatever authority you need. Maya nodded once. Then let's get started. The next 12 hours became a blur of intelligence briefings, threat assessments, and operational planning. Maya worked alongside Chen and a team of analysts who had been flown in from Washington. She reviewed communications intercepts, studied surveillance photographs, and mapped connections between Hamidi's known associates and potential American contacts. By noon, a pattern had emerged. He's targeting 3 locations simultaneously, Maya announced to the assembled team. A refugee processing center in Virginia, a women's shelter in Maryland, and a diplomatic event in Washington, where representatives from countries that have cracked down on trafficking will be present. Chen frowned. The refugee center and the shelter make sense given his operation, but the diplomatic event seems out of character. It's not out of character. It's escalation. Maya pointed to the map on the table. The first 2 targets send a message to the people who help victims escape. The third target sends a message to the governments trying to stop him. He's not just seeking revenge, he's establishing deterrence. How confident are you in this assessment? Confident enough that I'd stake my life on it. Maya met Chen's eyes. Which I'm prepared to do. Brennan had been silent throughout the briefing. Now he spoke. Staff Sergeant, you've been out of operational status for over 6 months. Your last deployment ended with your mentor's death. Are you certain you're ready for this? The question struck at something Maya had been avoiding since the moment Chen walked into Mercer's office. The doubt that lived beneath her training. The fear that her grief had compromised her capabilities. I don't know if I'm ready, she admitted. But I know what happens if I'm not there, and something goes wrong. I've seen the aftermath of Hamidi's operations. The women who survive carry scars that never heal. The ones who don't survive are often better off. She paused. Elena Vance told me once that the hardest part of our work was knowing we couldn't save everyone. She said the only thing worse than accepting that truth was using it as an excuse to stop trying. No one spoke. I'm not stopping. The authorization came from Quantico at 1400. Maya's clearances were reinstated to their previous level. She was attached to the response operation as a tactical consultant with field authorization. The team moved to a secure facility outside Washington where FBI and DHS personnel were coordinating the response. Maya found herself in a world she had left behind, surrounded by people who spoke in acronyms and operated in shadows. At 1700, surveillance confirmed activity at all 3 identified targets. We have movement at the refugee center, an analyst announced. 2 vehicles arrived within the last hour. Occupants match descriptions of known associates. Same at the shelter, another analyst added. A van has been parked across the street since 1300. We're seeing rotation of personnel inside. Chen turned to the FBI tactical commander. Are your teams in position? Ready to move on your order. Maya studied the screens showing surveillance feeds from each location. Something nagged at her. A pattern she recognized, but could not immediately articulate. Wait. Everyone turned. The timing is wrong. Maya moved to the central display. Hamidi doesn't launch simultaneous operations. He staggers them, uses the first strike to draw response, then hits secondary targets when resources are committed elsewhere. You're saying this is a setup. I'm saying we're looking at exactly what he wants us to see. She pointed to the refugee center feed. These personnel are visible. They want to be noticed. That's not how his teams operate. Chen's expression tightened. Then where's the real attack? Maya closed her eyes. She thought about Libya, about Hamidi's methods, about the way he structured operations to maximize psychological impact. The diplomatic event, she said suddenly. The security briefing said it starts at 1900. That's 90 minutes from now. We have teams covering the venue, covering it from outside. But Hamidi doesn't attack from outside. He infiltrates. He plants people inside the target before anyone knows there's a threat. Maya opened her eyes. We need to check every person who's already inside that venue. Staff catering maintenance. Anyone who entered in the last 24 hours. The tactical commander grabbed his radio. 45 minutes of frantic verification followed. Security footage was reviewed. Personnel files were cross-referenced. Background checks were rerun with expanded parameters. At 1847, 13 minutes before the event was scheduled to begin, they found it. 3 catering staff hired through a temp agency that was created 6 weeks ago, an analyst reported. The agency's registration traces back to a shell company with connections to known Hamidi financiers. Where are they now? Already inside the venue. They entered through the service entrance at 1600. Maya grabbed Chen's arm. I need to get in there. The venue is locked down. No additional personnel without verification. Then verify me, now. Chen hesitated for exactly 2 seconds. Then he made the call. Maya arrived at the venue at 1853, 7 minutes before the event was scheduled to begin. Security personnel rushed her through the service entrance with credentials that had been created in transit. The building was elegant, expansive, filled with people in formal attire who had no idea that somewhere among them were 3 individuals planning to kill as many of them as possible. Maya moved through the service corridors with purpose. She had memorized the layout during the briefing. Kitchen storage staging areas, access points to the main hall. Her earpiece crackled. Sinclair, we've lost visual on 2 of the 3 subjects, last seen entering the east service corridor. That was her corridor. Maya slowed her pace. Her senses sharpened. The techniques Elena Vance had drilled into her took over. Reading intent, anticipating movement, becoming aware of everything while appearing to notice nothing. Footsteps behind her. 2 sets, moving in coordination. She turned a corner and stopped. 2 men stood in front of her. Both wore catering uniforms. Both had the kind of stillness that marked trained operatives. You are lost, one of them said in accented English. This area is restricted. Maya's mind calculated options in fractions of seconds. They did not know who she was. They thought she was venue staff. That gave her approximately 3 seconds of advantage. I'm looking for the kitchen, she said, keeping her voice confused. They sent me to get more wine. The second man moved slightly to her left, flanking position. They were preparing to act. Kitchen is the other direction. Thank you. Maya started to turn away. Then she moved. The first man never saw the palm strike that crushed his trachea. He was still processing the change in her posture when his airway collapsed and he dropped to his knees, hands clawing at his throat. The second man was faster. He pulled a knife from beneath his uniform and slashed toward her midsection. Maya stepped inside the arc of the blade, trapped his arm against her body, and rotated. His elbow hyperextended with a crack that echoed in the corridor. The knife clattered to the floor. He tried to scream. Her hand covered his mouth. Her other arm snaked around his neck. "Where is the third one?" His eyes were wild with pain and fear. "The main hall," he gasped against her palm. "He has the device." Maya released him just long enough to strike a pressure point that rendered him unconscious. Then she was running. Her earpiece crackled again. "Sinclair, what's happening? We heard 2 down, third subject is in the main hall. He has a device." "What kind of device?" Maya burst through the service door into the main hall. 300 people in formal attire turned at the disruption. Security personnel moved toward her. She scanned the room. Caterers, waitstaff, guests. Her eyes processed faces at a rate that would have been impossible for anyone without her training. There, near the stage where the speakers would address the crowd, a man in a white catering jacket with his hand inside his pocket. His posture was wrong. His attention was wrong. Everything about him screamed threat to someone who knew how to look. Maya moved. Security tried to intercept her. She flowed around them like water around stones. The man saw her coming. His hand emerged from his pocket holding something metallic. Maya covered the remaining distance in 2 seconds. Her body collided with his just as his thumb moved toward the trigger. Her hand clamped over the device, preventing the motion from completing. They hit the ground together. He was strong. Trained. He fought with the desperation of someone who knew this was his only chance. But Maya had trained with Elena Vance. She had survived Libya. She had spent 2 years learning how to end threats in situations exactly like this. Her knee drove into his solar plexus. Her forearm pressed against his throat. Her other hand wrenched the device from his grip with a joint lock that separated 2 of his fingers. He screamed. Security swarmed over them, pulling her off, securing him, shouting commands that blurred into noise. Maya stood with the device in her hand. Her breathing was controlled. Her heart rate was elevated but steady. An FBI tactical officer approached. "Is that remote detonator?" She handed it to him carefully. "There's a bomb somewhere in this building. He was going to wait until the speeches started." The evacuation that followed was controlled chaos. Bomb disposal teams searched while dignitaries were rushed to vehicles. The device was found 23 minutes later, hidden in a ventilation shaft above the main stage. If it had detonated during the speeches, the kill radius would have encompassed every major target Hamidi wanted to eliminate. Maya sat on the bumper of an ambulance while a medic examined the cuts on her hands from the struggle. Chen approached with an expression she could not read. "You saved a lot of lives tonight." "I did my job." "Your job was consulting." Maya looked at him. "My job is whatever needs to be done." Chen was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. "Hamidi escaped. He wasn't at any of the 3 locations. We believe he was coordinating remotely from somewhere outside the country." "Then he'll try again?" "Almost certainly." Chen paused. "The question is what you want to do about it." Maya thought about the course at Camp Lejeune, about Dawson and Hale and the candidates she had been training, about the life she had been building. She thought about Elena Vance, about the promise she had made to stop operating in shadows, but she also thought about the man on the floor of that service corridor, about his words, about the willingness to kill 300 innocent people for revenge. Right now, I want to go back to my candidates. I want to finish what I started with them. She met Chen's eyes. But if Hamidi surfaces again, if there's another threat, you know where to find me. Chen nodded slowly. Fair enough. Maya stood and walked toward the vehicle that would take her back to Camp Lejeune. Behind her, the venue still swarmed with investigators and security personnel. She had prevented a massacre. She had taken down 3 operatives with training that officially did not exist. She had proven that the skills Elena Vance had given her still worked. But she had also been reminded of something she had tried to forget. The shadows never truly released the people who walked in them. They simply waited, and somewhere out there, Rashid Hamidi was waiting too. Maya returned to Camp Lejeune at 447 hours after she had left. Her body carried the exhaustion of sustained combat alertness. Her hands still bore the cuts from the struggle in the service corridor, but her mind was clear in a way it had not been since Yemen. She had done what she was trained to do. She had stopped a massacre, and she had walked away. Brennan was waiting outside the barracks when her vehicle pulled up. His face showed the kind of concern that combat veterans reserved for their own. I heard what happened in Washington. Maya stepped out of the vehicle slowly. News travels fast. When a staff sergeant takes down 3 operatives and prevents a terrorist attack at a diplomatic event, it travels very fast. He fell into step beside her. How are you? Tired, sore, alive? That's not what I asked. Maya stopped walking. The pre-dawn darkness wrapped around them, broken only by distant security lights. I don't know how I am. Her voice was quieter than she intended. For 18 months, I've been trying to become someone who doesn't do what I did tonight. Someone normal. Someone who teaches instead of kills. And now I'm wondering if that person was ever real, or just something I invented because I couldn't face what I actually am. Brennan was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried weight. I've been training Marines for 11 years. In that time, I've met exactly 3 people who had what you have. The ability to switch off everything human and become pure function when the situation demands it. He paused. 2 of them are dead. The 3rd is standing in front of me. Maya met his eyes. What happened to the other 2? One was killed in Fallujah. The other took his own life 2 years after leaving the Corps. Brennan's jaw tightened. The capability you carry is a gift and a curse. It saves lives in the moment, but it costs something that most people never understand. Elena understood. Vance was different. She found a way to balance it, to be the weapon when needed and the person when the weapon wasn't required. He held Maya's gaze. That's what you're trying to learn. That's what this course was supposed to help you find. Maya thought about the men in the service corridor, about the efficiency with which she had disabled them, about the complete absence of emotion during those seconds of violence. What if I can't find it? Then you keep trying, because the alternative is becoming one of those 2 people I mentioned. Brennan put his hand on her shoulder. You came back here instead of staying in Washington. That means something. Don't forget that. He walked away, leaving her alone with thoughts that would not quiet. The candidates had heard about Washington by the time Maya returned to training at 0800. The story had spread through the base with the speed that only military gossip could achieve. Details were embellished, exaggerated, transformed into something larger than what had actually occurred. Dawson approached her before the session began. Staff Sergeant, permission to speak freely. Maya nodded. The story going around says you took down 3 armed terrorists with your bare hands and stopped a bomb from killing 300 people. The story is approximately accurate. Dawson absorbed this. His expression shifted through several emotions before settling on something that looked like awe, mixed with uncertainty. I've been training with you for 3 weeks. I've seen what you can do in the pit. But I never imagined, he trailed off. You never imagined I would actually use it. I never imagined anyone could actually use it. Not like that. Not against real threats who were trying to kill them. Maya studied him. The arrogance that had defined him on her first day was completely gone now. In its place was something more complex. Respect, certainly, but also fear. Does it scare you? Dawson hesitated. Permission to be honest? Always. Yes, it scares me. He swallowed. Not you specifically. What you represent. The fact that there are people out there who can do what you did, and the only thing standing between them and the people I care about is whether someone like you gets there first. Maya considered his words. They were more thoughtful than she had expected from the man who had slammed her into the sand on her first day. That fear is appropriate. The world contains threats that most people never see. The training I'm giving you is designed to help you respond to those threats when they appear. She paused. But here's what you need to understand, Dawson. The capability is not the point. The purpose is the point. What do you mean? I could have killed those men in Washington. It would have been easier, actually, faster, less risk. But I didn't because the mission was to stop the attack, not to execute the attackers. Maya held his gaze. The techniques I teach are tools. What matters is what you use them for. If you forget that you become just another threat that someone has to stop. Dawson nodded slowly. The lesson was sinking in. Now get in the pit. We have work to do. The training session that followed was different from those that had come before. The candidates had seen abstract capability transform into concrete reality. Maya was no longer just an instructor with unusual skills. She was living proof of what those skills could accomplish. Their attention sharpened. Their questions became more focused. Their effort intensified. Hale pulled her aside during a water break. Staff Sergeant, I owe you something. Maya waited. When you first arrived, I tried to break you. I organized the harassment. I paired you with Dawson specifically to hurt you. I convinced myself I was protecting standards, but the truth is I was protecting my ego. His voice was rough. You could have ended my career. What I did crossed lines that should never be crossed. But instead of reporting me, you taught me. I didn't teach you to be kind. I taught you techniques. You taught me more than that. Hale met her eyes. You showed me what it looks like when someone who has every reason to destroy you chooses to build you up instead. That's not something I'm going to forget. Maya studied him. The transformation from the cold-eyed instructor who had mocked her on day 1 was remarkable. What will you do with what you've learned? I'll teach it, to everyone I train for the rest of my career. He paused. And I'll never again assume I understand someone based on what they look like on paper. Maya extended her hand. Then we're good. Hale took it. His grip was firm, respectful. We're good. The course continued for another week. Maya pushed the candidates harder than ever, knowing that their time together was limited. She taught techniques she had never planned to share. Principles that Elena Vance had drilled into her during 2 years of classified training. Reading intent. Economy of motion. The mental stillness that separated fighters from practitioners. On the 20th day, Colonel Mercer called her to the administrative building. Staff Sergeant Sinclair, I have news from Washington. Maya stood at attention. Ma'am, the intelligence community has been tracking Rashid Hamidi since the failed attack. Yesterday we confirmed his location. Mercer's expression was carefully controlled. He's in Montenegro, operating from a compound that local authorities are unable or unwilling to approach. Maya's blood cooled. What's the operational plan? JSOC is assembling a team. The mission is capture if possible, eliminate if necessary. They've requested you as a tactical consultant. Consultant? That's the official designation. Mercer paused. The reality is that you know Hamidi's methods better than anyone currently available. You've seen how he operates. You've disrupted his network. They want you on the ground when they move. Maya processed the request. Montenegro was outside her previous operational experience, but the target was familiar. Hamidi had tried to kill 300 people in Washington. He had put a bounty on her identity. He was responsible for trafficking networks that had destroyed countless lives. When, wheels up in 18 hours. I need to speak with my candidates before I leave. Mercer nodded. Take whatever time you need. But Staff Sergeant, she hesitated. This may not be a mission you return from on schedule. Hamidi knows someone disrupted his operation. He'll be prepared for retaliation. I understand. Do you? Mercer's voice softened slightly. You've built something here over the past 3 weeks. The candidates you've trained are different now. Better. They'll carry what you taught them for the rest of their careers. If you don't come back from Montenegro, then they'll carry it without me. Maya met her eyes. That's what teaching is, ma'am. Passing on what you know so it survives, even if you don't. Mercer was silent for a long moment. Elena Vance said something similar to me once, years ago when we served together briefly. She shook her head slowly. She would be proud of who you've become. Maya felt the words strike something deep inside her. The crack in her control that had been present since Yemen widened slightly. Thank you, ma'am. Maya assembled the 8 candidates she had trained most intensively in the pit at 1700. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the sand that had witnessed their transformation. I'm leaving tonight on an operation I can't discuss. I don't know when I'll return. Dawson stepped forward. Is this related to Washington? I can't answer that. You're going after him. It was not a question. The one who sent those men. Maya did not confirm or deny. She did not need to. While I'm gone, Master Sergeant Brennan will supervise your training. But I want you to remember something. She looked at each of them in turn. What I've taught you is not about fighting. It's about choice. The choice to engage or disengage. The choice to control or to destroy. The choice to use what you know in service of something larger than yourself. Hale spoke. We won't forget. You will forget. Everyone forgets when the pressure mounts and the fear takes over. Maya's voice hardened. That's why you train. So that when your conscious mind fails, your body remembers. So that the choice happens faster than thought. She paused. There may come a day when you face a situation like the one I faced in Washington, when you're the only thing standing between a threat and the people it wants to destroy. In that moment, everything else disappears. Your rank, your training, your fear. The only thing that matters is action. The candidates listened in silence. I chose this life because someone I loved believed I could make a difference. She's gone now, but her belief remains. Maya touched the spot on her forearm where her tattoo lay hidden beneath her sleeve. Whatever happens tonight, whatever happens in the days to come, carry what I've taught you forward. Teach it to others. Let it spread. Dawson's voice was rough. Come back, Staff Sergeant. We're not done learning. Maya allowed herself a small smile. Then make sure you're ready for more when I return. She walked away from the pit without looking back. The flight to Montenegro departed at 0100 from a military airfield that did not appear on any public map. Maya sat among 7 operators from units whose designations were classified. They did not ask her name. She did not offer it. Briefings occurred in transit. Satellite imagery of Hamidi's compound. Personnel estimates. Entry points and extraction routes. Maya absorbed everything, her mind mapping possibilities and threats. The compound was larger than the intelligence suggested. Hamidi had learned from Libya. He had fortified his position with security measures designed to detect and repel exactly the kind of operation that was coming for him. "We're looking at approximately 30 armed personnel," the team leader announced. "Exterior patrols, interior guards, and a quick reaction force that can deploy within 90 seconds of an alarm." "What about civilians?" "Unknown. Hamidi has been known to use human shields. Women and children from his trafficking operations positioned at strategic points to complicate our rules of engagement." Maya's jaw tightened. The man she was hunting used innocent victims as defensive weapons. The cruelty was not surprising, but it still ignited something cold and dangerous inside her. "What's my role? Tactical advisor during approach. Once we breach, you shadow Team 2 through the residential section." The team leader paused. "Your knowledge of Hamidi's methods may help us distinguish legitimate targets from complications." "Understood." The aircraft landed at a forward operating base in a country that could not officially acknowledge their presence. Final preparations took 3 hours. Equipment checks, communication tests, rehearsals of breach sequences. At 0400 local time, the teams departed for the compound. Maya moved with Team 2 through darkness that pressed against her like a physical weight. Her training took over. Every step calculated for noise discipline. Every breath controlled for rhythm. The compound emerged from the darkness like a malignant growth. Walls topped with razor wire, guard towers at each corner, the kind of security that screamed paranoia and unlimited resources. "Sniper teams report targets identified. Awaiting authorization." The team leader's voice was barely a whisper in Maya's earpiece. "Execute." 4 shots broke the silence simultaneously. 4 guards dropped. The approach window opened. Team 1 breached the main entrance with explosive charges that shattered reinforced doors. Team 2 followed Maya through a secondary entry point that intelligence had identified as a service access. The interior was chaos within seconds. Gunfire echoed through corridors. Voices shouted in languages Maya recognized from her previous operations. She moved with Team 2 through the residential section clearing rooms with efficiency that came from muscle memory. Threats were neutralized. Non-combatants were secured. Then she found them. A room at the end of the corridor, locked from outside. Inside, the sounds of women crying. "Breach this door," Maya ordered. The operator beside her placed a charge. The lock shattered. Inside were 16 women. Their ages ranged from barely adult to middle-aged. Their faces showed the marks of trauma that Maya recognized from Libya. Hamidi's merchandise. "You're safe now," Maya said in Arabic, then repeated it in English and French. "We're here to take you home." Some of them wept. Some stared with the hollow eyes of people who had stopped believing in rescue. Maya detailed 2 operators to secure the women and guide them toward the extraction point. Then she continued deeper into the compound. The gunfire was fading now. The quick reaction force had been eliminated. Resistance was collapsing. But Hamidi was not among the captured or the dead. "Team 1, this is Advisor. What's the status on primary target, static?" Then the team leader's voice. "Negative contact on primary. He's not in the main building. Maya's instincts screamed. She had studied this man. She knew how he thought. He has a bolt hole, a hidden exit that wasn't in our intelligence. We're searching now. Search faster. If he reaches the perimeter, we lose him. Maya broke away from Team 2, following corridors that led toward the compound's interior. Her training guided her. Hamidi would have planned for this moment. He would have anticipated that someday someone would come for him. Where would he run? She thought about Libya, about the compound she had infiltrated, about the way Hamidi had positioned his most valuable assets. Underground. He would go underground. She found the hidden entrance behind a storage unit that had been designed to look permanent. A steel door concealed by crates leading to a passage that descended into darkness. I've found a tunnel. Northwest section behind Storage Building 3. I'm pursuing. Wait for backup. Maya was already moving. The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for 2 people to walk abreast. Emergency lighting cast weak illumination every 20 meters. The air smelled of earth and fear. Footsteps ahead. Running. Maya accelerated. The tunnel ended at another steel door, this one partially open. Beyond it, moonlight. An exit point that opened into forested terrain outside the compound's perimeter. A vehicle was waiting. Engine running. A figure climbing into the passenger seat. Rashid Hamidi. Maya burst through the door at a full sprint. The driver saw her reaching for a weapon. She covered the distance in 3 seconds. Her hand caught the driver's arm as he raised his pistol. She twisted, broke his wrist, pulled him from the vehicle in a single motion. His head struck the ground, and he went still. Hamidi had a weapon now aimed at her chest from inside the vehicle. "You're the one from Washington." His voice was calm, almost admiring. "I wondered who had disrupted my operation." "Step out of the vehicle." "So young, so talented." He did not move. "My people said you fought like nothing they had ever seen, that you appeared from nowhere and destroyed everything in your path. Last warning, step out." Hamidi smiled. It was the smile of a man who had seen too much evil to fear death. "In Libya, you killed 2 of my most trusted men. You freed the merchandise I had spent months acquiring. You cost me millions of dollars and years of work." His finger tightened on the trigger. "But you made one mistake." "What mistake?" "You let me live." He fired. Maya was already moving. The bullet passed through the space where her chest had been a fraction of a second earlier. She closed the distance, caught his gun hand, bent the wrist backward until the weapon clattered onto the seat. Her other hand found his throat. "The women you destroyed, the lives you ended, the suffering you caused." Her voice was ice. "It ends tonight." She could kill him. One movement, one decision. The same thing she had done in Libya, in the service corridor, in all the dark places where her training had been required. But Elena Vance's voice echoed in her mind. "The moment you do it for ego or revenge, you become the monster they fear." This was not about stopping a threat. The threat was neutralized. This was about vengeance. Maya released him. Hamidi gasped, clutching his throat. "I could end your life right now. Part of me wants to." She stepped back. "But you don't get to make me into what you are. You face justice. Real justice. In a courtroom where the women you hurt can watch you answer for what you did." Operators from Team 1 emerged from the tunnel, weapons raised. "Primary target secured," Maya reported. "He's all yours." She walked away from the vehicle while they took Hamidi into custody. Her hands were shaking now. The adrenaline that had sustained her was fading. She had captured the man who tried to kill 300 people. She had rescued 16 women from his operation. She had ended a threat that had haunted her since Libya. And she had chosen not to become a killer when killing was not required. Elena Vance would have been proud. The extraction took 4 hours. The women were transported to a medical facility where they would receive care and eventually be returned to their families. Hamidi was secured for transport to a location where he would face international prosecution for crimes against humanity. Maya sat in the aircraft that carried her back toward American soil and let herself feel the exhaustion that she had been holding at bay. It was finished, not the work. The work would never be truly finished. But this chapter, the one that had begun in Libya and continued through Yemen and Washington and now Montenegro, was complete. She reached into her pocket and retrieved the photograph she carried always. Elena Vance's face smiled at her from the worn paper. "I didn't become the monster," Maya whispered. "I made a different choice." The photograph offered no response, but somehow in the silence, Maya felt something shift. The weight she had been carrying since Yemen, the guilt and grief and self-doubt, began to lighten. She was still a weapon. That would never change. But she was also something more, a teacher, a protector, a person who chose purpose over vengeance. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her for the first time in days. Maya landed at Camp Lejeune 47 hours after departing for Montenegro. Her body carried the accumulated exhaustion of combat operations, sleepless nights, and the emotional weight of choices that would define her for the rest of her life. But when she stepped off the transport aircraft, something inside her had changed. Brennan was waiting on the tarmac. "You look like hell." Maya managed a tired smile. "You should see the other guy." "I heard." Brennan fell into step beside her. "Hamidi is in custody. 16 women rescued. 0 friendly casualties." He paused. "They're calling it one of the most successful counter-trafficking operations in the last decade. They're calling it that because they don't know the details. They know enough. And they know you were there." Maya stopped walking. The morning sun pressed against her face, warm and relentless. "What happens now?" "Now you decide what you want to be." Brennan's voice was quiet. "You've proven you can still operate at the highest level. Washington will want you back. The intelligence community will want you back. There are people in places you've never heard of who are already discussing your future. And if I don't want that future, then you tell them no. You finish what you started here. You become the instructor you came here to be." Maya thought about the 16 women she had freed in Montenegro, about the 300 people she had saved in Washington, about the candidates waiting in the pit who had no idea what she had done over the past 2 days. Elena used to say that the hardest choice was knowing when to stop. Maya's voice was soft. She said the work would consume you if you let it, that you had to find the moment when enough was enough. Did she ever find that moment? She was looking for it when she died. The silence between them stretched. "I'm not ready to stop completely," Maya said finally. "But I'm also not ready to disappear into the shadows again. There has to be something in between." Brennan nodded slowly. "There is. It's called being human." The course graduation ceremony took place 3 days later. 26 candidates received their certifications as Marine combat instructors. Maya stood at the front of the formation in her service uniform, the black belt she had earned through demonstration wrapped around her waist. Colonel Mercer addressed the graduates with words about duty, honor, and the responsibility they carried. standard ceremony, standard speeches. But when she finished, she did something unexpected. Before we dismiss, I want to recognize one individual whose contribution to this course exceeded anything we could have anticipated. Mercer turned toward Maya. Staff Sergeant Maya Sinclair arrived at this course 3 weeks ago with records that showed nothing remarkable. What those records failed to capture was the extraordinary capability and character of the woman who carried them. The graduates stood in perfect formation. Dawson Hale Patterson and the others watched with expressions that carried new understanding. During her time here, Staff Sergeant Sinclair served as assistant instructor and lead trainer for the Advanced Combatives module. She developed curriculum that will be integrated into future courses. She mentored candidates who arrived with assumptions and departed with abilities they never imagined possible. Mercer paused. She also responded to a national security emergency that I am not authorized to discuss in detail. Her actions during that response saved lives and eliminated threats. The specifics will remain classified, but the result speaks for itself. Maya stood motionless. The recognition felt strange after years of operating in complete anonymity. Staff Sergeant Sinclair, please step forward. Maya moved to position in front of the colonel. By order of the Commandant of the Marine Corps, you are hereby awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal for exceptionally meritorious service. Additionally, you are offered a permanent assignment as senior instructor for advanced close quarters combat at the School of Infantry West. The words landed with weight Maya had not anticipated. The assignment is optional. You may decline if you wish to pursue other opportunities. Mercer met her eyes. But it is the hope of this command that you will accept. What you've built here over the past weeks is something special. It would be a loss to see it end. Maya thought about the decision she had been wrestling with since Montenegro, the pull of operational work, the satisfaction of teaching, the memory of Elena Vance, and everything she had represented. Ma'am, I accept the assignment. Something shifted in Mercer's expression. Relief, perhaps, or satisfaction. Then welcome to the team, Staff Sergeant. Officially. The ceremony concluded with the traditional dismissal. Graduates scattered to reunite with families and celebrate completion. Maya stood alone at the edge of the formation area, processing everything that had happened. Dawson approached first. Staff Sergeant, permission to speak. Maya nodded. 3 weeks ago I slammed you into the sand and thought I'd proved something about who belonged in this course and who didn't. His voice carried weight. Now I'm looking at someone who captured an international terrorist and saved hundreds of lives while I was practicing techniques in a training pit. The techniques you practiced will save lives too. Different lives in different situations, but no less important. Maybe. Dawson shook his head. What I know for certain is that I arrived here thinking I understood combat. You showed me I didn't understand anything. Understanding takes time. You've made a start. Dawson extended his hand. Thank you. For everything. Maya took his hand. His grip was firm, respectful, fundamentally different from the arrogance he had shown on her first day. Go be worthy of what you learned. He nodded and walked away. Hale came next. His approach was slower, more deliberate. I've been thinking about what you said before you left for that operation. His voice was quiet. About choice. About using what we know in service of something larger than ourselves. What conclusions did you reach? That I've spent my career focused on the wrong things. Rank, recognition, being the best in the room. He paused. You're the best in every room you enter, but you don't act like it matters. You act like the only thing that matters is what you can give to others. It's not selflessness. It's math. One operator can only be in one place at a time, but one instructor can train hundreds of operators who can be in hundreds of places. Maya held his gaze. The multiplication effect is what makes teaching powerful. Hale absorbed this. I want to do what you do, not the classified operations. The teaching, building people up instead of just beating them down. Then stay in touch. When you're ready for the next level of instruction, come back. I'll be here. Something shifted in his expression. Hope, perhaps. Or purpose. I'll hold you to that. He walked away, leaving Maya alone with the fading echoes of the ceremony. That evening, Maya returned to her quarters and retrieved the photograph she had carried since Yemen. Elena Vance's face smiled at her from the worn paper unchanged, despite everything that had happened. I think I finally understand what you meant. Maya spoke quietly to the image. About allies being more valuable than enemies. About finding something that keeps you human. The photograph offered no response, but the weight it carried had transformed. You told me once that the hardest part of our work was the silence, the missions no one would acknowledge, the skills that could never be discussed. Maya traced the edge of Elena's face with her thumb. I don't want to live in silence anymore. I want to take what you gave me and pass it on. Openly. Officially. In a way that spreads further than we ever could alone. She set the photograph on her desk, propped against the lamp, so Elena's image faced the room. This is what you wanted for me. Isn't it not more operations? Not more killing? But this. Building something that outlasts both of us. For the first time since Yemen, Maya felt the grief transform into something different. Not healed. Never fully healed. But integrated. Part of who she was, instead of something that controlled her. Thank you, she whispered, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. The new course cycle began 2 weeks later. Maya stood at the entrance to Building 247 as 41 fresh candidates arrived for the Marine Combat Instructor course. Their faces showed the same mix of determination and uncertainty that she had seen in every previous cohort. But this time, Maya was not hiding, was not. She was not pretending to be something less than what she was. She stood in full uniform, with her black belt visible and her reputation preceding her. Brennan approached with a tablet showing the candidate roster. Full house, including 3 women this time. Maya scanned the names. Any special cases I should know about? A staff sergeant from logistics with no combat deployments and a greenbelt qualification. Brennan's voice carried amusement. Sound familiar? Maya allowed herself a small smile. Let me guess. Someone flagged her combative scores and made a phone call. Something like that. Brennan handed her the tablet. Her file suggests abilities that don't match her official record. The recommendation came from MARSOC Intelligence. History repeating. Another young woman with hidden capabilities seeking a path that the Corps was not designed to provide. I'll handle her personally. I thought you might say that. The candidates assembled in formation. Maya walked to the front and faced them with the presence of someone who had seen things they could not imagine. My name is Staff Sergeant Maya Sinclair. I'm the senior instructor for Advanced Close Quarters Combat. For the next 6 weeks, you belong to me. 41 faces stared back. Some with curiosity. Some with skepticism. A few with the same dismissive assessment that Dawson had shown on her first day. Some of you have heard stories about what I've done. Some of you have decided those stories are exaggerated. Some of you think you already know how to fight, and this course is just a formality." She let the words settle. "By the time we're finished, you'll understand that everything you think you know is incomplete. The techniques you rely on have limitations you haven't discovered. The confidence you carry is based on assumptions that will get you killed." A large corporal in the front row shifted. His posture radiated the same arrogance Maya had seen countless times. "You have a question, Corporal." "Permission to speak freely, Staff Sergeant." "Always." "The stories say you took down 8 Marines in 45 seconds. That seems physically impossible for someone your size." Maya met his eyes. "What's your name?" "Corporal Torres." "Torres, how much do you weigh?" 225. "How many years of hand-to-hand training?" 6. "Wrestling in high school, then Marine Corps martial arts since boot camp." Maya nodded. "After this session, you and I will step into the pit. You can test whether the stories are physically impossible." Something flickered in his eyes. The first crack in his certainty. "Until then we train, pair up, basic grappling drills, takedowns and escapes." The session proceeded with the intensity that Maya demanded. She moved through the formation correcting form, demonstrating techniques pushing candidates past their comfort zones. The staff sergeant from logistics, a woman named Rivera, trained in the back row. Her movements were too smooth to match her official greenbelt qualification. Her reflexes were too fast. Her awareness was too sharp. Maya recognized the signs. She had shown the same signs 3 weeks ago. When the session ended, Torres stepped into the pit. He was larger than Dawson, more confident, probably more skilled by conventional standards. "No strikes to the throat, groin, or spine," Maya announced. "Everything else is fair. Tap to submit." Torres moved first. A level change into a double-leg takedown executed with speed and power that demonstrated genuine ability. Maya sprawled, dropped her weight, and transitioned to his back before his drive could complete. Her arms snaked around his throat. The choke locked. He fought. He struggled. He applied every escape he had learned in 6 years of training. 4 seconds later, his palm hit the sand. Maya released immediately. Torres rose with an expression that mixed embarrassment with something more productive. Recognition. He had just learned something that no amount of instruction could have taught. "The stories are accurate," Maya said. "Any other questions?" Silence. "Good. Tomorrow, 0600. Dismissed." The candidates dispersed. Rivera lingered at the edge of the pit. "Staff Sergeant, permission to approach." Maya nodded. Rivera moved closer. Her eyes carried the same controlled intensity that Maya saw in her own mirror. "The Colonel told me to find you when I arrived. She said you might understand my situation better than anyone else on this base." "What situation is that?" Rivera hesitated. "I spent 14 months attached to a unit that doesn't officially exist. My training came from people whose names I'll never be allowed to speak. I'm here because the person who recruited me is dead, and I don't know what I'm supposed to become now." Maya studied her. The parallels were unmistakable. "Who was your mentor?" "I can't say the name. It's classified above my current clearance." "But you can describe her." Rivera's composure cracked slightly. "She was 53 when she died. Silver hair. The most capable operator I ever saw. She told me once that the measure of a warrior wasn't the enemies they stopped, but the allies they created." The word struck Maya with force that made her breath catch. Elena Vance had trained others. Of course she had. The Ghost Element program had existed for years before Maya joined. There would be women scattered throughout the Corps who carried the same skills, the same burdens, the same grief. "Your mentor," Maya said quietly, was also my mentor. Rivera's eyes widened. Master Gunnery Sergeant Elena Vance recruited me when I was 18. She spent 2 years teaching me everything I know. She died 6 months ago, protecting me during an extraction that went wrong. Tears gathered in Rivera's eyes. She recruited me when I was 19. I only trained with her for 8 months before she died, but she changed everything about who I am. Maya reached out and gripped Rivera's shoulder. Then we're sisters. Different mothers. Same teacher. Rivera nodded, her composure fragmenting. I didn't know there were others. I thought I was the only one. You're not alone. You were never alone. Maya held her gaze. What I'm building here, what I'm going to spend the rest of my career building, is a place where people like us can become something more than weapons, where we can pass on what Elena gave us without hiding who we are. Can I be part of that? You already are. The weeks that followed transformed Maya's understanding of purpose. She trained the new cohort with everything she had learned. She identified candidates with hidden potential and nurtured capabilities they did not know they possessed. She built relationships that crossed the boundaries between instructor and student, becoming mentor guide and sister to Marines who needed exactly what she could provide. Rivera became her first official protege. The skills Elena had planted in her flourished under Maya's instruction. By the end of the course, she was assisting with training sessions demonstrating techniques to candidates who had no idea about her classified background. Brennan observed the transformation with quiet satisfaction. "You're building a lineage," he said one evening as they watched candidates practice in the pit. "Not just training individuals. Creating a chain that will extend far beyond your lifetime." That was always Elena's vision. She just never got to see it fully realized. She sees it through you. The words carried weight that Maya had not expected. She thought about the photograph still propped on her desk, about the woman who had believed in her when no one else could see what she would become. "The multiplication effect," Maya said quietly. "One operator in one place. One instructor training hundreds of operators in hundreds of places. One mentor creating other mentors who create more mentors." "How far do you think it spreads?" "I don't know. That's the point. The effect extends beyond what any individual can measure." She paused. "Elena taught me. I'll teach others. They'll teach more. Eventually, what she gave me reaches people who never knew she existed." Brennan nodded. "That's legacy, the kind that actually matters." The course graduation brought another ceremony, another group of Marines transformed by what they had learned. Maya stood at the front and watched Torres Rivera and their peers receive certifications that represented far more than official qualifications. After the ceremony, Maya found herself alone at the pit's edge. The sand was marked with the imprints of hundreds of bodies that had fallen and risen during the past weeks. Each mark represented a lesson learned, a limitation discovered, a capability developed. She touched the tattoo on her forearm, the phoenix rising from 7 flames hidden beneath her sleeve, but always present. She had considered adding an 8th flame for Montenegro, for the moment when she chose not to become a killer, when killing was not required. She decided to leave it unchanged. The 7 flames represented her past, the operations that shaped her, the violence that made her effective. But the phoenix was rising. That was the point. Not destruction, but transformation. Not endings, but beginnings. Elena Vance had given her the skills to survive. Now Maya was giving those skills to others, not as weapons of destruction, but as tools for protection, purpose, and growth. The sun was setting over Camp Lejeune. The light caught the sand and turned it gold. Maya thought about the journey that had brought her here. The compound in Libya. the helicopter in Yemen, the pit where she had taken down 8 Marines in 45 seconds, the service corridor in Washington, the tunnel in Montenegro. Each moment had shaped her. Each choice had defined her. Now she stood at the beginning of something new, something that would outlast her physical capabilities, something that would spread through generations of Marines she would never meet. She was no longer just a weapon. She was a forge that created other warriors, a teacher who transformed the institution that had tried to break her, a legacy that multiplied beyond any single mission. Elena Vance had told her once that the measure of a warrior was not the enemies they stopped, but the allies they created. Maya Sinclair had finally become that measure. Rivera approached as the last light faded. "Staff Sergeant, the new candidates arrive tomorrow. 43 this time." Maya nodded. "Then we should rest. Tomorrow we start again." "How many cycles will you run before you're done?" Maya considered the question. The answer came from somewhere deep inside her, from the place where Elena's teaching lived, alongside her own hard-won wisdom. "I'm not stopping until every Marine who needs what I have gets the chance to learn it. Until the multiplication effect reaches critical mass. Until what Elena built through me becomes permanent." "That could take your entire career." "Then it takes my entire career." Maya turned to face her protégé. "There are worse things than spending your life building something that matters." Rivera studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I'll be there, for all of it." "I know." They walked away from the pit, together instructor and student sisters forged in the same fire. Behind them, the sand waited for tomorrow's lessons. The story of Maya Sinclair, the new recruit they had smirked at, the 20-year-old woman who had taken down 8 Marines in 45 seconds, was far from over. But the story of the weapon was finished. The story of the teacher had just begun.